Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur, as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
Welcome to the Wolfman Chronicles. This is Chapter 13 of Book 7, which makes it Episode 90. Alaska to Russia, a rescue mission. Jack stepped out of the crowded terminal and into the icy Sochi air, the cold wind cutting through his jacket. Snow flurries danced under the dim glow of the street lights, and the bustling city around him felt strangely empty. He pulled out his phone, staring at the blank screen with growing frustration. He had tried calling Nadia again, with no results, just like the last 12 times. Well, she could be anywhere, Jack muttered, stuffing the phone back into his pocket. Now, Jack flagged down a cab, sliding into the back seat. "City center," he said in Russian, trying to keep his voice calm. The driver nodded, and the car merged into the icy flow of traffic. As they wound through the crowded streets of Sochi, Jack's mind raced. He replayed everything Sasha had told him on the phone. The terror in her voice, the brief broken call from Natia, the whispered plea for help. Now, he had promised Sasha that he'd bring her daughter home, but so far he kind of felt like he was chasing a ghost. Think, Jack, if you were on the run, where would you go? A cheap hostel? Too obvious. A luxury hotel? Too risky. Maybe somewhere in between. An old guest house. One of those tucked-away rentals that tourists don't know about. But how can he narrow it down without a lead? The cab pulled to a stop at a busy intersection, and the driver glanced back. "Here's good?" Yeah, fine. Jack handed over some rubles, climbing out and pulling his coat tighter. He started walking, the pavement hard beneath his boots. He needed to think. He needed to clear his head. He needed a plan. Natia pulled her scarf tighter around her neck, the wind cutting at her cheeks, as she ducked behind the parked cars lining the street. Across the busy avenue, she saw Viktor Komarov step out of the sleek black SUV, flanked by two burly bodyguards. He adjusted his expensive coat, the silver glint of his cufflinks catching the weak spring sun. He didn't look like a killer, just another rich Russian businessman, smiling and shaking hands with a gray-haired man who had been waiting for him outside the ornate hotel entrance. But Nadia knew better. Igor had warned her about Viktor, told her how he hid his monstrous activities behind a mask of wealth and respectability. Human trafficking, illegal arms deals, and now, if Igor's investigation had been right, the trafficking of children out of Cambodia. And Igor had paid the price for digging too deeply. Her chest tightened. She forced herself to stay calm. Don't let the anger control you. Use it. Be smart. Be careful. She watched as Viktor and his bodyguards followed the gray-haired man into the hotel. For a moment, she considered rushing across the street, barging in, demanding answers. But that was the kind of impulsiveness that would get her killed. Natia pulled out her phone, discreetly taking a few photos of Viktor and his entourage entering the hotel. This wasn't her first time tailing someone. She was trained for this. She needed to know who he met with and who his allies were, his business associates, and his enemies. Delivery truck rumbled into the valley, and Natia ducked behind a stack of crates, peering around the corner. The hotel's rear entrance was busy with staff and deliveries, easy to get lost in the crowd. Nadia slipped into the bustling kitchen with a group of waitstaff bringing in trays of supplies. She pulled a discarded apron from a hook, draped it over her coat, and picked up an empty tray, blending in. She moved carefully, avoiding direct eye contact until she found a side hallway leading toward the main lobby. Victor's voice echoed from around the corner, his booming laugh unmistakable. Nadia ducked behind a decorative pillar, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Victor was speaking in Russian, his voice friendly but laced with that icy edge that she remembered. Of course, the shipment must be handled discreetly. The authorities are becoming more vigilant, but our partners in Phnom Penh have assured me that the children will be moved without delay. The gray-haired man laughed nervously. Your confidence is reassuring, Victor. Natia's blood ran cold. The children? It was all true. She should record this and get proof. Slowly, she pulled out her phone, trying to angle it without being seen. But just as she hit the record button, a hand gripped her arm and a voice whispered in her ear, "Leave." She felt the man's fingers grip her arm tightly as he moved her towards the back door exit. She could have taken him down. She knew how to protect herself. But his grip felt more like a warning than a threat. He has spies all around us. If you know what's good for you, you'll leave now and don't return. Nadia nodded and left, walked down the long alley toward the street where she could lose herself amongst the tourists. A tear ran down her cheek. She missed Igor fiercely. Igor had always believed in justice, but not in the polished bureaucratic kind handed down from a high court. No, his version of justice was raw, a relentless drive to expose corruption, to shine a light on the darkness where predators thrived. He wasn't a government agent, nor a journalist with a press pass. He was something far more dangerous. He was a freelancer, an investigator with nothing to lose and no one to answer to. It began innocently enough, or so she thought. He and Nadia, together, had managed to do the impossible, return the Orlov diamond to Russia, an act that should have secured their safety. They were granted asylum by the Russian government. Their efforts were applauded in whispered circles of the intelligence community. And for a brief, shining moment, they thought they were free. But freedom was a fragile illusion. The days following their return, Igor's restless nature refused to let him be still. He had learned to read between the lines, to see the patterns in the shadows cast by powerful men. And there was one name that kept resurfacing in his quiet investigations: Viktor Kamarov. Victor was a businessman on the surface. He was wealthy and well-connected. He was a fixture in Sochi's glittering nightlife. But his empire was built on more than luxury resorts and shipping contracts. Beneath the polished facade lurked a monster, a trafficker, a predator who's dealt in human lives. It was a conversation in a smoky back room, whispered beneath the hum of cheap vodka and expensive cigars, that first confirmed Igor's suspicions. "You think he's moving another shipment?" one asked, his voice barely more than a murmur. "Of course. Cambodia again. Children this time. Less trouble, more profit. They don't fight back." The words sent a chill down Igor's spine, but he kept his face a mask of casual disinterest. Leaning against the bar, his eyes on his drink. Children. Disposable, they had said. A shipment. Human lives. Treated like cargo. Now Igor knew that Komarov had deep ties within the criminal underworld, but the scale of it shocked even him. Children smuggled in from Cambodia, disappearing into the dark corners of Russia, and with the silent blessing of corrupt officials who lined their pockets with blood money. He had to do something. He couldn't ignore it. But there were two kinds of truths in Russia, those whispered and those buried. And Igor quickly learned that he was stepping into the kind that were buried. He started digging, piecing together the network, the faces, the routes. It was like tracing a spider's web in the dark. But the more he uncovered, the more dangerous it became. Natia had tried to make him stop, begged him to let it go. "We did what we came here to do," she had whispered, her hands shaking as she gripped his. "We're safe now. Please, Igor." But safety was another illusion. Surely when there were monsters like Komarov walking free. He thought he was being careful, but then came the shadows following them in the streets, the silent phone calls that hung up when answered, the sudden chill that seemed to creep over his every step. Still, he didn't back down. Until that final day at the Rosa Kutor ski resort, a place that they thought was safe, a place where he had almost convinced himself that they could pretend, just for one day, that they were just ordinary people again, skiing down snow-covered slopes, laughing in the crisp air. Then the sharp crack of a rifle. The way Igor's body jerked, his eyes wide with shock, blood staining the snow beneath him. Nadia's screams swallowed by the cold wind. The shooter had been far away, a shadow lost in the mountains. But Nadia knew the truth even before she saw Igor's pale, lifeless face. Viktor Komarov had ordered the hit. The man who had built an empire on human suffering, the man that Igor had dared to defy, and now he had taken everything from her. But not for long. Natia's grief turned to something cold and sharp. Vengeance. If Komarov thought she would run, he was wrong. She would stay in the shadows, learn his secrets, and destroy him, just as Igor would have wanted. Nadia stared at her phone. Jack's latest text staring back at her. "I am here. Let me know where you are." A lump formed in her throat. Jack had come all this way. She knew he wouldn't leave without her. Sasha must have made him promise that much. But she also knew what he would say. "Nadia, you can't do this alone. You can't fight the world's monsters by yourself." But wasn't that exactly what she had to do? Nadia's gaze drifted to the bustling street beyond the cafe window. Tourists wandered in groups, laughing and taking selfies, wrapped in scarves against the cold. None of them had any idea about the darkness she had stumbled into, the horror that she had uncovered. Igor's face flashed in her mind, his easy smile, the way his laugh had always made her feel safe, and then the memory of that smile disappearing, his body crumpling in the snow. Her hands clenched, knuckles white. She would never let Viktor Komarov get away with it, not while she could still fight. She stared at Jack's message again. He was here. Of course he was. Jack coming to the rescue. Part of her wanted to ignore him, to keep him in the dark, to protect him from the danger she was willingly diving into. But another part of her knew that he might be the only person in the world that she could trust right now. Nadia's fingers hesitated, then tapped out quickly, "Cafe Marina, 20 minutes. She hit send before she could change her mind. The moment the message went through, a wave of anxiety washed over her. What would she tell him? Would he try to drag her out into a plane back to Alaska? No, she wasn't going to let that happen. She would make Jack understand, and if he refused, then she would leave without him. Sliding her phone back into her pocket, Nadia pushed through the cafe's swinging door, leaving the chill of the street behind. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air, and she chose a small table near the window where she could see the entrance. Minutes dragged by, each one feeling longer than the last. She sipped her coffee, fingers nervously twisting the cardboard sleeve. The door swung open, and she saw him. Jack, tall and broad-shouldered, his rugged face scanning the room. When his gaze settled upon her, his expression softened, relief flooding his features. He crossed the room and she stood, feeling a rush of emotion she hadn't expected. "Jack," she whispered. "Nadia." He wrapped her in a warm, comforting hug, and for a moment her resolve wavered. Here was a lifeline, a way out of the darkness, a chance to run away from all the ugliness and the evil. But she couldn't. Not now. Not yet. They pulled apart, and Jack's warm smile turned serious. I was starting to think I'd have to search every cafe in Sochi. Maybe I would have let you, she said, forcing a small smile. He pulled out a chair, sitting across from her. Listen, Sasha's worried sick. I promised her I'd bring you back safe. I know. Nadia's fingers tightened around her cup. But Jack, not going back. Not yet. Jack's expression darkened slightly. Nadia, you're not safe here. I know, she shot back, leaning forward at him. But I know who killed Igor. I know what they're doing, and I have to stop them. Jack rubbed his chin, his sharp eyes watching her closely. You think you're going to take down a Russian crime lord by yourself? No, but I can expose him. Jack leaned back, crossing his arms. This sounds a lot like a suicide mission. It's not. It's not if you help me. Her voice softened and she leaned in. Jack, please. I know this is dangerous. I know I could get hurt, or worse. But if I just walk away, if I let Victor keep doing this, I'll never forgive myself, and I promise you, I'll go back to Alaska with you after we expose his next shipment. Jack stirred his coffee, watching the steam swirl up in a delicate spiral before fading into the chill of the cafe's air. Across the table, Nadia leaned forward, her fingers wrapped around her mug like it was the only warmth she could cling to. Her eyes were sharp and intense, haunted. You don't understand, Jack. This isn't just about Igor anymore, she whispered, her voice low but fierce. This is about all of them, all the children he's trafficking. It's not just some crime ring. It's a nightmare, and someone has to stop it. Nadia, you're talking about going halfway around the world to take on human trafficking network run by a ruthless criminal. Trying to keep his voice calm. That's not a mission, that's a suicide run. Her jaw tightened. It's only a suicide run if you give up before you even start, and I'm not giving up. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. I've been following Viktor Komarov for days now. I know where he's going. I know what he's doing. He's trafficking children, Jack. Boys and girls taken from their families and sold on the black market. Nadia, this is insane, Jack said, leaning back, a mix of frustration and fear battling in his chest. You're one person, and Komarov has an entire network, guards, guns, bribes. You won't make it 5 minutes. Which is why I'm not going alone, she shot back, locking eyes with him. You're the one person I know who can actually help me, who won't back down. Her face softened, guilt flashing across her eyes. How can I just walk away? How can I go home to Alaska with you, knowing I did nothing, while more children vanish, knowing that the man who killed Igor is still out there and still hurting people? This is not revenge. This is justice. It's doing something that matters. I can't promise I can protect you, Nadia, Jack replied. I'm not asking you to protect me, Jack. I'm asking you to help me, to be my backup, to keep me from doing something stupid and getting myself killed, she said. Her voice was steady now. Her gaze was unwavering. Because if I go alone, I probably won't survive. But with you, maybe, just maybe, we have a chance. Jack stared at her. His chest was tightening. She was so much like her mother, headstrong, determined, and willing to take on the world if it meant making a difference. He hated how much he admired that about her, and how much it terrified him. He was quiet for a long moment, jaw clenched and his gaze searching her. Finally he sighed. Tell me the details. Nadia leaned closer, her voice a low whisper. We'll go to Cambodia. Victor's trafficking the children out of Phnom Penh. I want to know how he's doing it, who he's working with, and I want to shut him down. Jack whistled softly. Cambodia? That's a long way from Alaska. It's a long way from Sochi, too. Nadia's face was set with determination, but there was a sadness there, too, one that no amount of courage could hide. And from what I gather, the shipments come in once every few weeks. We need to work fast if we're going to stop this next shipment. I guess I'd better book us a couple of flights to Cambodia, Jack said. Natia nodded. Where's your hotel? I'll be there at 11 tonight. We can leave tomorrow. Jack took out a small business card with his hotel's name on it and wrote down a room number, passing it to Nadia. She quickly put the card in her inside jacket pocket. She reached over and put her hand on Jack's. Thank you. She smiled, her eyes moistening briefly. She leaned over and kissed Jack on the cheek. Then she turned and walked away. Jack sat in the small cafe for the next hour, thinking of how he would tell Sasha, what he would tell her, and wondering just what he was getting himself into. And though he knew you'd be dragging Nadia home to Alaska, part of him couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly where he was supposed to be, helping her face the darkness instead of running from it, and face the monsters head on. Jack stood outside the cafe, the cold Sochi wind biting at his face, and he pulled his coat tighter. A sigh escaped his lips. He pulled out his phone, staring at the familiar number. He did not want to make this call, but he also knew that he had to. The phone rang only once before Sasha's voice came through, frantic and desperate. Jack, did you find her? Is she safe? He leaned against the frosted railing, closed his eyes for a moment. Yeah, Sasha, I found her. She's safe. A choked sob of relief echoed through the line. Oh, thank God, thank God. When are you coming home? Jack hesitated, the words catching in his throat. Sasha, she's not ready to come back to Alaska just yet. What? Panic flooded Sasha's voice. But you promised me, Jack. You promised me you'd bring her home. I know I did. Jack's voice softened, but there was a firmness in it. But she's not just being stubborn. She's trying to do something dangerous, but important. Dangerous? The fear was back, sharper this time. Jack, what's going on? She's chasing a lead. The man who killed Igor. He's involved in something terrible. Human trafficking. She's convinced she can stop him and expose him. No, this is insane, Jack. Bring her home. Just drag her onto a plane if you have to. Sasha's voice was desperate. A mother's instinct to protect, fighting against the distance between them. I wish it were that simple, Jack whispered, but it's not. She's an adult, Sasha. I can't force her. But I won't leave her alone either. She's headed to Cambodia, and I'm going with her. Cambodia? Sasha's voice broke. Jack, please don't do this. Don't let her drag you into her madness. Just bring her home, please. I know you're scared. So am I, Jack admitted, his voice thick with emotion. But she's not giving up on this, and I can't give up on her. I promised you that I would keep her safe, and I'm going to. I swear it. Silence. The long, painful kind that seemed to stretch forever. Finally, Sasha's voice came through, small and defeated. I don't want to lose you both. You won't, Jack promised, gripping the phone tighter. I'll bring her back, Sasha. I'll bring both of us back. Jack, I love you. And I love you too. The call ended, leaving Jack staring at the gray sky, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Well, let's go save the world, Jack muttered, feeling the ghost of Sasha's fear tugging at his heart. Sasha paced the living room floor like a caged wolf, her arms folded tightly across her chest. The rain drummed against the window panes of the big log house, matching the restless thudding of her heart. Cambodia? Why Cambodia? It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. They should be on a plane home right now. They should be coming back here where it's safe, she muttered, her voice a mixture of anger and fear. I don't understand. What is she thinking? What is he thinking? Sasha, you know Jack. Grizzly's gruff voice broke in. He was sitting in his usual spot by the fireplace, a half-carved moose antler in his hands, his old whittling knife moving in slow, methodical strokes. Boy's got a hero complex. Can't turn his back on someone in trouble, especially not your girl. Hero complex or just a fool's errand? Sasha snapped, turning to glare at him. What can they possibly do in Cambodia? They're just two people. What are they going to do? Take down an entire criminal network by themselves? Miguel leaned against the doorframe, watching her with concern. Sasha, please, sit down. You're going to wear a hole in the floor. I don't want to sit down, Miguel. I want to do something. Sasha's voice wavered, but she forced herself to stay strong. But I'm here, pacing this stupid room while my daughter is... She's out there, God knows where, risking her life, and Jack is risking his life for her. For what? Some misguided adventure? Grizzly sighed, setting the antler and the knife aside. You give that girl some credit. She's your daughter, ain't she? Smart, tough as they come. And Jack, well, he's more stubborn than a mule. If he promised to keep her safe, he'll do it. Sasha shook her head, tears welling up despite her efforts to keep them at bay. You don't understand. It's not just that I'm worried. I'm angry. Angry that she would rather run off on this wild goose chase instead of getting here with her family. She has her reasons, Miguel said gently. And Jack? He must think those reasons are good enough to stay. He wouldn't risk his life for nothing. Well, glad you all have such faith, Sasha muttered, crossing to the window and staring out into the mist-shrouded trees. A long silence fell over the room. Grizzly glanced at Miguel, who nodded slightly. You want to know the truth? Grizzly grumbled, leaning forward in his chair. They're out there doing what they think is right. Same thing you did when you were in Russia. The same thing you did when you tried to keep your past away from them. Your girl's grown up, Sasha. She's made her choice. And that Jack, he's got his own kind of honor sticking by her side. But when it comes to human trafficking, especially of youngsters, well, that's a cause worth fighting for. Sasha's fingers clenched the edge of the curtain, her knuckles white. Honor can get both of them killed, even if it is for a good cause. And fear can lock you up tighter than any prison, Grizzly countered. You want to be mad? Fine. You want to worry? That's your right. But don't you dare go thinking they're fools for trying to make a difference in this world. Sasha turned, eyes flashing. But what happens if they don't come back, Grizzly? What then? Then we do what we always do. Grizzly leaned back, picking up his antler knife again. We fight like hell to bring them home. Miguel stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Sasha's shoulders. They'll be okay, Sasha. I believe in them, and you need to believe too. Sasha leaned against Miguel, letting out a shaky breath. The rain continued to tap against the window, indifferent to her silent prayers. Miguel stood quietly by the window, his gaze fixed on the rain-soaked trees beyond, but his mind raced. Sasha's words hung in the air, her desperation like a knife twisting in his chest. But beneath his calm exterior, a plan was already forming. We can't just sit here. We can't just wait. He felt the warmth of Sasha leaning against him, her fear like a physical weight, but his own thoughts drifted farther, across oceans, to a city tangled in the chaotic underworld of human trafficking, Cambodia. Jack and Nadia were walking straight into a den of vipers, and they had no idea who their enemies truly were. But they didn't have to face it alone. Julian was always ready for a fight, and with his strength and uncanny survival instincts, he would be a force to be reckoned with. Usko's skill and strategic mind would be valuable, and Miguel himself, he was no stranger to danger, not anymore. Juanita could stay with Catherine, help take care of the twins in the gallery. She'd understand. Catherine would too. And Sasha needs to stay here to care for Rachel. Grizzly and Rosa will help. But there was one more ally he couldn't ignore. Miguel closed his eyes, reaching out in the way he had only recently come to understand. A silent message sent across the silent void. A connection that was at once natural and supernatural. Mavka, I know you can hear me. I need your help. I'm going away to help Jack and Nadia, but I can't leave without asking. Will you watch over them too? Will you watch over Sasha while I'm gone? The forest seemed to shift, the rain tapping a different rhythm on the roof, almost like a whispered promise. He felt a warmth in his chest, a subtle, comforting presence. Her answer. Miguel's eyes opened, and a quiet determination settled over him. He eased away from Sasha, squeezing her shoulder gently. I'm going to make some calls, he said softly. I've got a plan. Sasha looked up at him, confused. What do you mean? What are you doing? I'm calling Julian. Usko too. Jack and Nadia are family, and we protect our family. A flicker of hope appeared in Sasha's eyes. You're going to go after him? Miguel smiled, and though his expression was fierce, we're in this together. And as Miguel stepped outside onto the porch, the rain washing over him, he felt the forest air stir around him, as if whispering its blessing.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and I hope you'll join us next week for more of the Wolfman Chronicles. And until then, have a really wonderful week, everyone.
Hey folks, Clay Steele here. You know, I spend a lot of time outdoors around this here campfire. If you're like me, you get downright annoyed by all those pesky mosquitoes buzzing around. They're just looking for a free meal. Nothing ruins a good night under the stars faster than slapping and scratching at bites. And that's why I keep the bee itch stop. I keep it handy. One swipe and that itch is gone. No more burning, no more scratching, just good old relief. Made right here in Nevada with all natural ingredients. It's safe for the whole family. So if you're tired of being a mosquito buffet, do yourself a favor and get you some bee itch stop today. And this is Clay Steele. Watch out for them bugs.